Greetings and welcome, I'm Ash, and these are my first impressions for the release version of UnderRail. I quickly realized while playing UnderRail that this isn't the sort of game you beat in a single sitting, so my proper review is going to be a few days off. Until then, I figured I would give you my impressions of the game as I go through it, explaining what exactly I find great about it and what doesn't really work. UnderRail is an isometric, as old school as it gets RPG set in a post-apocalyptic scenario where the surface has been rendered uninhabitable and the remnants of the human population now live and wage war against each other in underground metro tunnels. When you first make a character in UnderRail, you will be bombarded with an insane amount of choice when it comes to your character's build. The myriad of ways you can go from here is one of the game's greatest strengths, but it still should have been something that is more slowly introduced to you rather than dumped as a massive wall of stats literally 1 minute after you launch the game. The stats and talents are well explained and you will at a glance understand what they do, but it still doesn't prepare you for the challenges ahead because UnderRail doesn't tell you that sometimes combat is going to be mandatory and there is no way of you talking your way out of it. This made my first quest a living nightmare because my speech, sneaking and crafting oriented character couldn't shoot a pistol to save his own life, quite literally. So I did what is standard with these old school RPGs and I scrapped my first character in order to make a more focused one, rather than a jack of all trades, master of getting shot at. The second time around my character was still speech and sneaking oriented because I am after all a sneaky bastard, but instead of a broad spread of crafting disciplines I decided to focus on trap making and chemistry. The rest of the talent points I put into advancing my psychic powers because, as everyone knows, in games when you suffer heavy doses of radiation during your childhood, you don't become hideously mutated and die, you get superpowers. To UnderRail's credit, however, advancing your psychic powers does indeed take a heavy toll on your physique and you will have to sacrifice a lot of your constitution in your pursuit for power. And what a power it is, I am really glad I chose the psychic route because its use in combat has been absolutely invaluable to me and my sneaky tactics. Since I almost always get the first blow in fights, I use that to my advantage by either slowing down melee attackers or fearing anyone that might come near and then focusing down one by one all of the harder opponents. As it turns out, it's really fun to break the minds of your enemies as they hopelessly try to attack you only to run away in fear the moment they come to you. It is a really fun combat style because while you can dish out impressive damage and control the flow of the battle, you are also made out of paper, the really thin kind. What this means is that combat in UnderRail is hard, even on normal difficulty, but there are plenty of opportunities to be smart about it and quote-unquote cheat your way out of difficult battles. Since healing items are scarce and expensive, I quickly realized that those points I put into trap making and chemistry cannot go to waste if I'm going to survive. So I started making traps and explosives, which, as you might imagine, are quite effective at getting you out of scraps. The traps especially have been an MVP for me because the early enemies are almost all beasts and as such they will charge directly for you. So a couple of well-placed traps, such as Caltrops, can absolutely decimate them. Even with all of these tools and tricks, you are still vulnerable, so make sure to mind your positioning and fight only in areas that benefit you. For example, tight corridors are great against rat hounds, a sort of rat/dog hybrid, because they use their numbers as their main advantage, and if you can isolate them and fight them one by one, you're basically going to win. On the other hand, if you're fighting human opponents, I would suggest using corners to get them all to group up on one place and do some fireball on man action, because otherwise you're just going to get shot and die, because in UnderRail you tend to be outnumbered. Another trick I figured out relatively recently is that animals aren't the best when it comes to operating locks, you know, the whole lack of thumbs and all that. What you can do to exploit that is to lure a pack of rat hounds, for example, to a fenced off area, run in and slam the door into their face. From then on, you can just shoot them with impunity as they hopelessly try to claw at you. This might sound like cheating, but UnderRail is incredibly rough towards you and I can't imagine anyone just going through with guns blazing. So taking any opportunity to get revenge in the game is a good thing. But combat isn't everything in UnderRail, especially if you play with the recommended experience settings, where you only gain experience by finding interesting places and items in the world. It might sound a bit silly, but when the experience is moved from combat to exploration, the game becomes a whole lot more interesting and tense. Suddenly, stealth is valuable for more than just stabbing people in the ass, because why waste ammo and precious healing items on a bunch of bandits when you can simply sneak around them, raid their camp for valuables, and gain some experience that way. One of my most memorable moments I had so far was when I was in the middle of a lunatic enemy camp. Completely outgunned and outnumbered, but they never actually spotted me as I was ducking and weaving between boxes and pillars, constantly hugging shadowy corners, hoping that I just won't bump into anyone and die instantly. However, I did survive, and I left the camp a few experience points richer and filled with so much loot the poor merchants in the city ran out of money trying to buy off the dozen or so pistols I pilfered. I'm sure you could clear the camp with a few grenades and a whole lot of ammo, but I still appreciate that UnderRail allows you to sometimes completely avoid combat yet still reap the benefits for it, rather than, unlike other games, just ending up underleveled. I didn't mention this before, but it is completely up to you to choose which type of experience system you want. You can either use the oddities one, the one I just described, or you can use the standard one where you gain experience for doing quests and killing people. It is up to you can easily do so, and the game is perfectly balanced with that in mind. The story I can't really tell you much about. In all the time I've played so far, I've done a bunch of quests and learned a lot about the history of the place, but I still don't feel like the main story has begun, as I'm still completing odd jobs for people rather than doing something of importance. One thing I can tell you is that the writing is pretty damn solid. I haven't met any spectacular characters as of yet, but the ones I did meet feel like unique people with their own opinions and ways of expression. Small details such as character or location descriptions, green text you can see in the video, are everywhere, and they really make the world feel like an actual place, one that I found myself getting quite immersed in. Oddly enough, I haven't met any companion characters yet, a staple of old school RPGs. Whether this means I'm just a big old Dumbo and I've completely missed them, or if UnderRail is a purely single-player RPG, I don't know, but all of the stuff I've done so far was seemingly balanced with one character in mind, so maybe. If you end up playing UnderRail yourself, make sure to go into the options and increase the text font. I like to pride myself on my excellent eyesight, but the default font size is so teeny weeny I kept straining my eyes before I even thought about there being an option to change that sort of thing. It wasn't my brightest moment, and once you increase the font size, it's perfectly fine. So, my early impressions of UnderRail are so far good. It is obviously designed as an old school RPG with all of the benefits and flaws that come along with that, so just from this fact alone, you should have an idea if it is a game for you or not. I think the most important thing I can say about UnderRail is that I am itching to play more of it, to find out where exactly the story is going to lead me, to discover what other insane things I'll be able to pull off with my character's mind control abilities, and to see the depths of the UnderRail. And that is it as far as my first impressions go. Depending on how long the game goes, I'll either post a review next or I'll do another video explaining my thoughts as I go through it. So stick around, it should be fun. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, please do leave a like, it ends up helping me a lot, and if you would like to see more, you can either subscribe here or visit the website linked down below. That one tends to be updated more frequently. With all of that said, I'll see you guys soon. See ya!